The following video that you're about to watch is protected under fair use. Sailor Moon and Sailor Moon Crystal are both owned by Toei Animation, Naoko Takeuchi, and Viz Media. Please support the official releases now on DVD. Hey guys, this is SamAttack4427 here, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special video on this YouTube channel. Now, this one is going to be completely different as it's something that I've always been wanting to do for quite a while. Now, I've seen people on the internet do like these whole compare and contrast videos for quite a while, so I figured that I want to give it a try for myself. So with that being said, let's talk about the real reason why you clicked on this video, and that is, of course, Sailor Moon. Oh yeah, you knew what I'm talking about, straight from the original manga created by Naoko Takeuchi and evolved into the ever-popular anime that we know today. As many of you guys already know, I talked about Sailor Moon before when I placed it as my #1 pick in one of my episodes of Family Movie Collaboration, the top 10 best anime of all time. And I stated that it captured the spirit with its incredible storyline and amazing animation and caught the eye on most magical girl anime that came out over the years and has become an underground hit for kids, teens, and whoever that guy is. And of course, as of this decade, it has become an even bigger hit for us fans. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm glad you asked. In 2014, it was announced that anime dubbing company Viz Media came in to create a brand new English dub of Sailor Moon just 20 years after...
Oh, my foot! Oh! You seem to have gained a little weight.
I've seen gorillas at the zoo that are prettier than you are.
Oh, how dare you!
He is Tuxedo Mask. I don't believe it.
Ever since you fell off the roof, you've been acting like a granola bar.
Don't listen to her, Grandpa.
Whatever happened when both Dink and Cloverway did their own English dub, and surprisingly enough, people were very thrilled by it. With a brand new cast for the dub and getting the right people to handle it, the new English dub of Sailor Moon finally did justice and gave our favorite superhero in a sailor uniform in a miniskirt a full-on spectacular dub that not only brings us a lot of nostalgia, but also fits into our modern-day society. Speaking of which, almost 20 years afterwards comes not just another anime on Sailor Moon, but also a reboot on the original came around that's not necessarily called Sailor Moon, but it's entitled Sailor Moon Crystal. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Just when we think we had enough of anything Sailor Moon related, Sailor Moon Crystal comes in for a brand new generation. Now, when it was first announced during the franchise's 20th anniversary, fans immediately got excited. They were quite curious to see on how a brand new interpretation of Sailor Moon could be portrayed in the modern world. The reboot suffered through numerous delays after it was announced until it was finally released in Japan around July of 2014 and then came to us overseas a year later. And despite mixed reactions from most fans, with some people loving it while others hating it, they were surprisingly open to it, seeing it as a reimagining of the original rather than a remake and staying true to the original manga. But now, with both the original and the remake currently going on as of now, everyone is now seem to be rather split on which series is the better Sailor Moon series. Which one had the better story, which one had the better action and animation, which one had the better villains, and of course, which one had the better Sailor Moon. Well, you clicked on this video for a reason, so might as well get it out of the way. I've been wanting to do this for a long time now, ever since I saw both of those shows, so I'm gonna do it for all of you. I'm gonna go over both of these shows on this video and be comparing and contrasting them to see which one of these is better. Sort of similar to the Nostalgia Critic on how he did his old versus new segments. I thought it's a good idea and I figured I would give my 2 cents on it. So with that being said, this is anime versus anime in a special video that I like to call Sailor Moon versus Sailor Moon Crystal.
星座の瞬き数え占う恋の行方同じ国に生まれた
Now before I begin, I want to get a few things out of the way. One is that this video is not meant to be taken seriously. This is all opinion based, so naturally, if you're one of those people who haven't seen both of those shows, there are going to be a few major spoilers. Second is that I was originally going to not include Season 3 of Crystal as well as Super S and Sailor Stars because during the time I was recording the video, those haven't came out just yet. But I guess seeing of how the first two that I mentioned earlier already did came out, I think it's fair that I will go ahead and include those while I leave out Sailor Stars for a bit because as I'm recording this right about now, Part 1 is currently out on Blu-ray right about now, with Part 2 soon to be on the horizon. And also, just for safekeeping, I think I will go ahead and include a slight mention to the two-part Eternal movie that has just been recently announced, and it won't be due to come out until next year. Third is that I'm gonna be moving the order around for a bit because seeing of how both of those shows are named Sailor Moon, it only makes sense for me to judge Sailor Moon last. We good on that? Deal or no deal? Okay then, let's go ahead and start off Sailor Moon versus Sailor Moon Crystal with our first category, Best Story. For while most people forget that much like every other anime that has been released so far, Sailor Moon is one of those shows that falls into that category. For those who don't know, the original Sailor Moon manga is actually a pretty interesting read, mostly because of its great atmosphere, good characters, and an amazing story. So this would beg the number one question, how would it translate well in other types of media? Well, that could be quite a bit of a challenge because the original manga contains a lot of story as well as a few bits of action and romantic moments to help keep it intriguing. And with both anime shows we got so far, one from the 90s and the other one in the mid-2010s, they both did a fantastic job at that, while at the same time, they did some stuff that is a bit different. How different both of these anime do? Well, let's compare and contrast. The original wanted to be its own individual story with in-between fast and slow action, some comedic attempts, and an engaging story. Sadly, some of the other stuff in it is absolutely cheesy and over the top, where in Sailor Moon Crystal, it's much more close to the original manga that it's based on, with much more realistic and interesting characters, a darker yet much lighter tone, and a darker take to make it a whole lot more engaging. Alright, so we have two different versions, both based on the manga, but which one handled the story much better and translate pretty well? Now that's where the big debate comes in. We know for the fact that the original has a lot of 90s cheese to it, and some parts of it stray away from the original manga, but you can make the argument that it was trying to go for its own individual storyline, kind of like what Pokemon is doing right now. This is why you think the original wanted to go for its own individual story, while the new version is much more closer to the original manga that it was based on. But no, it's surprisingly backwards. The original Sailor Moon anime is actually very easy to follow. Just the story of a regular old teenage girl who has been tasked to stop the forces of evil to take over the world, teams up with the other Guardians along the way to join in on her mission, and not to mention, get into a touchy romance with a guy. The new Sailor Moon anime, on the other hand, does have what the original had, but the only major difference is that it pretty much gets to the action and the cool stuff much quickly in order to save up time. And yeah, I do get the idea as it is much closer to the original manga in making each episode acts, again, much like the original manga, but it can be a big problem with the new one because, well, if they did things too quickly, then it would be a little bit too rushed for us. But with that said, through most of the hokey moments it has, the original Sailor Moon anime did a much better job in having a story that's pretty following. Even the other 3 seasons, as well as part of Season 5 that followed up sometime later. Each one either taking its time or setting up the main arc in general. Hell, even the second season actually added an extra arc to help build the main story arc up. The Black Moon arc did start off several episodes after the R season starts, but with the Makaiju arc that came before, it actually shows exactly why. The new version, like I said, jumps ahead from one main story arc to the next one in like 12 to 13 episodes in, and yeah, it does help reduce down the new one from the original so it won't be too similar, but it's way too rushed in order to get to the cool stuff already, but I guess a few breathing moments will help out much better. But the original did take its time to establish each character, and yes, most parts of it is pretty goofy, but it can be, at the very least, help with development for each and every single point in the show altogether. So yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit it, the original Sailor Moon anime clearly knows how to handle its own story on one side, and be faithful to the manga on the other side. Point goes to Sailor Moon. But what good is story in an anime without action? Well, let's find out with Best Action! Now this one is really tough because both shows actually have their own style and even high points and low points in terms of their own action. For example, getting to see Sailor Moon's signature pose in both anime is actually pretty fun to watch. We've only seen it in drawings, and getting to see it come to life is a thrill to witness. Also, a few moves incorporated with her powers in both versions are pretty fun. But what's the difference between the two of them? Well, looking back towards the original, the action in it is pretty impressive, but most of it is surprisingly underwhelming. I'm not saying that it's bad or anything, oh no, there are some really good ones, like I really admire the final battle scenes at the end of seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4, and a few select moments in each episode which follows the source material is actually really impressive. But everything else though is a bit too slow and kind of choppy. But with the new version, the fighting in it is much more slick and choreographed incredibly well. It adapts to its environment incredibly well and could play up to some really cool action moments. But going back to the original, for while most of the action is not really impressive, I will say most of them with her powers is pretty cool, almost making it feel like she's a really young Wonder Woman. But the only problem with that, for while she cowers in the corner avoiding the fight and bursts out crying, but more on that later, it's basically looking like she's delivering the final blow already as opposed to sometime later. With the new one, for while it does have the same thing, it does pick up several episodes later with the action scenes from her and the other Sailor Guardians, and while incorporating their powers in this, makes it impressive to watch to see how they come across a situation and how to get out of it, making their recovery more impressive. So if anything, I think the action is flowed out much better in the new version. Not saying that the action in the original is bad, the new version is a whole lot more impressive to watch. Because quite frankly, when you see Sailor Moon fighting her enemies, you really feel like you're fighting along with her. And seeing of how it played out to make it more charming, it also makes it a major difference to get it right. So, it's a close call on that one, but Sailor Moon Crystal did a much better job in terms of action. Point goes to Crystal. So let's step aside from all of that and get right onto the visuals of it. Well, aside from the live action series in Japan, I'm just only judging both anime. Oh, you get the idea. This is best animation. Again, in many respects, it's a pretty tough choice on this one because both shows have a very unique style in terms of animation, and the animation company, Toei Animation, the same company behind One Piece and Dragon Ball, did do a fine job in giving both versions different styles. But who does a fine job at capturing it the best? Well, going towards the original, it was done in traditional 2D animation, like any other anime back in the 90s. Just drawing the characters while being placed in front of painted backgrounds. Seems plain and simple and helps adapt to their environment, almost feeling like they're really there. The new version does seem to do the same thing as well, with not only some newly updated animation, but at the same time mix it in with CGI. Really? Really? Awkward CGI. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad CGI during the transformation scenes and the whole process done all in computers, as in one of the behind the scenes videos I found online showed that the whole process can go a whole lot faster with this type of technology, but I don't think it's rendered out very well. Again, not bad in my opinion, but could have been detailed out a bit more. However, due to my complaints on that front, I am glad that Season 3 of Crystal actually fixed up that major issue, as the animation in it is done much better in that. The animation in the original is a whole lot more detailed, and even in the transformation scenes, it flows out incredibly well. And as you can tell in another behind the scenes video I found related to the original this time, it's just a simple process. Draw out the characters, put them in front of a film cell, color them in, and that's it. Nothing wrong with that. Because of this, even though it does take a long time to complete, the animation in the original is flowed out more and added a lot of detail in the character design. The new version does do that too, but it could have been a whole lot more slick. Point goes to Sailor Moon. In order to bring these characters to life, you need the proper voice actors to give them life. So, with that being said, let's see which one of the two did a much better job with best voice acting. Now, apart from the animation portion on how it can bring the characters and environment to life, voice acting is another key element to help give these characters we know and love more life into them. So I know people are gonna say that I should talk about the original Japanese version in this category, but honestly, for while it would be nice to talk about, but that will have to be a separate video for another time. So seeing of how both versions do have English dubs done by Viz Media, we'll just mainly focus more on that. In both anime, in terms of their English dubs, they have chosen some pretty good voice actors for each and every one of those characters. With voice actors consisting of Stephanie Sheh, Robbie Daymond, Michelle Ruff, Johnny Yan Bosch, Christina V, Kay Higgins, Amanda Miller, even Jeremy freaking Lee is a part of this English dub of both of these shows. Now, in terms of which dub in one of those anime is better, well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this topic. With the original Sailor Moon anime, its English dub did try its best to match up with the track from the original Japanese version. Seems simple enough, even each voices that each voice actor give out in each and every one of those characters actually match their personalities.
Oh, really? Good for him. There's a pattern to this labyrinth, and I think I can figure it out. Great, going to get tougher. This is the new Sailor V manga.
Hey, that's mine, and I haven't read it yet.
Let's do what now?
You know what? Clean up this big mess, of course.
Why not try a new hairstyle? It might make you feel better.
For while that is impressive to watch, a few others on the other hand kind of felt like they're overacting their lines as opposed to giving out a good performance.
That's enough. You sound like a dying dog.
What is it, Usagi?
They're eating cheesecake from Charmant. I want it. But you kicked my butt so hard now there's a crack in it.
That's enough.
Now, I'm not saying it's bad or anything, I just felt that maybe some parts in it are completely over the top. But however, most of the actors did do a fine job in this, like Stephanie Sheh does do a fine job in making Sailor Moon more peppy and upbeat. Robbie Daymond as Tuxedo Mask did do an incredible job in making him very charming. And even Christina V is incredible in making Sailor Mars a bit stubborn in order to help Sailor Moon do better. Even though for the fact that their little feud doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Even a few emotional moments in it does play out just fine, and you can actually feel for them and actually feel sorry for them for once. But like I said, it's all good, but at the same time, it's pretty hammy at the same time. However, the English dub in the new version, for while the same thing, it puts out more effort in each performance for each character and gives them much more personality. For example, like both Usagi and Rei are not arguing with each other like they did in the original, through Christina V's performance, it gives out her past to Usagi on how she is a little bit stubborn at the same time. Well, sort of. Even Jeremy Lee, one voice actor that I admire so much in anything related to anime, really gives out on what Sailor Venus means to her. Through her performance and through her charisma as well as her charm, she puts a lot of effort into her character. I'm not kidding, listen to her in this.
I met my partner Artemis long before you met Luna. I went by the codename Sailor V, and together we set out to solve the rash of mysterious crimes that seemed to be plaguing Tokyo. The crimes were all connected, but there was something more.
And if you think that is impressive, then let's see what happens when we play one scene in this with Sailor Venus having the vocals of Lucy from Fairy Tail.
What kept you, princess? You're late. Show me the legendary silver crystal.
You're supposed to come from the spirit world to help, not to give me attitude.
No? Okay, well how about we play this scene while using the vocals of Asuna from Sword Art Online?
I always seem to run into him when I come here.
Oh, I'll stick by you even if you move halfway across the planet.
Oh wait, that's a whole lot worse. But aside from that, with the English dub in Crystal, much like the original, some of the emotional moments in it are impressive. But it carries out a whole lot more as you actually feel sorry for them and makes you really want to cheer for them. And with a few parts that are heartbreaking, really are heartbreaking. So yeah, in between the two, the voice acting in the new version is pretty fun to watch because you actually feel for the characters a little bit more. Point goes to Crystal. But you can't have an adventure without another key element in terms of making an anime, that being music. But which one of the two did a much better job in terms of capturing its audience in terms of music? Well, I couldn't decide because I like the music in both versions. Yeah, that's right. I listen to anime music. I find it pretty interesting. I need something to liven me up a bit. Oh, thank you for that. This is best music. Now, as we clearly know, music is the #1 key element to make anything look good, especially in terms of anime. So as you can clearly tell, both versions have different unique styles when it comes to putting together great music. And yes, I listened to both OSTs from both anime. So let's compare and contrast. The music in the original kept it a bit peppy and very slick, much like any other anime in the 90s. And for while it is fun to listen to, I felt it could have been placed in another show. The music in Crystal, however, is a whole lot more complex and pretty interesting. And some of the pieces in each scene for each and every episode makes it stand out even more. But with that said, a few select others are a little bit too over the top. Well, most of the time. And for while not bad, you could have just toned it down a bit more to make it much more interesting. But it would beg to differ. What about a few select moments where the music in both versions stand out incredibly well? Well, I think I should get to the real meat and potatoes with this topic, with the most popular moment in both versions, the ever-popular transformation sequences. With the original anime, the music kept it to simple 90s pop, while the animation that I talked about earlier flows incredibly well, complete with a small group singing in the background. But the music in the new version had a whole lot more of an orchestral feel to it, while at the same time add a bit more of an epic feel to it, complete with an amazing choir. And it's just so freaking amazing. Not to mention, in most of the fight scenes in Crystal, the music in almost every single one of them has got me incredibly pumped up. And don't get me wrong, the music in the original is still good, but some of them, I have to admit, are a little bit underwhelming and could have been flowed out more. However, there are some pieces of music from the original that do flow incredibly well. For example, the music for while we see the villains in the original is very imitating and does get us goosebumps every time, but even then, that's done a whole lot better in the new version. So if anything, I guess I see a whole lot more effort and technique with the music in the new version because the people who worked on it while working on the new Sailor Moon anime took a lot of time to make it a whole lot more peppy, upbeat, and very epic. The original is still trying its best to be catchy, but at the same time, it's a tad bit too corny. It's not bad to be fair, but it's just like any other music made in the early 90s. And seeing of how the music in both versions did do their best to give it even more of a sense of charm, the music in the new version made it stand out a whole lot more, and if I ever want to think of music of Sailor Moon trying to be epic, I think of the music in this. Point goes to Crystal! But you can't have a superhero show without villains, and both versions of Sailor Moon have an incredible library of some great villains, as well as a few weak ones. But which one of these is better? Well, let's get a crack at it with Best Villains! Again, in many respects, it's a pretty tough choice with this one. Both versions of Sailor Moon has a great lineup of villains to try and capture their look and feel of the original manga that they were based off on. So by seeing them, you do have a reason to hate them and want to see our heroes defeat them and stop them from, you guessed it, taking over the world.
Of course!
But this would beg the number one question. Which one of these villains in both versions are a whole lot more interesting and fun to watch? Or at the very least, which one of these are a whole lot more imitating? Well, as we all know, with most of the villains in both versions, such as the majority of the Dark Kingdom, really stands out incredibly well. And they have to, especially Queen Beryl. She's the most intimidating villain to kickstart both versions, and for while, there's no time to devote her character in the original, but, going into spoiler territory, but she's been given a backstory in the new version on how she turned to the dark side and why she wanted to destroy the Earth, especially Sailor Moon. But however, there is one thing that Queen Beryl in the original has that the new version doesn't, that being personality. As much as I do love Queen Beryl in the new version and the way they reveal her backstory is impressive, Queen Beryl in the original does stand out more as much of a more intimidating villain a whole lot more. She's very determined to get what she wants, but in the wrong way. She's very stern and she's incredibly full of it whenever she gets angry, almost going towards Nazi levels. And given to our country now about to be taken over by our own Nazis, that's saying a lot. Same thing can be said with not only the rest of the Dark Kingdom, but also the Black Moon Clan and the Deathbusters in the later seasons. The four Knights of the Dark Kingdom, for while very sinister in the new version, has a whole lot more slick in the original and are incredibly imitating, and whenever they're on screen, you see on how they are that way and see why the Sailor Guardians have to stop them. The Black Moon Clan in the original are also that way whenever they're on screen and are impressive to watch. Where I kinda say the same thing for the new version, but however, they're a tad bit too rushed throughout the second season, and most of the majority of them get killed off after only one episode. That does create a whole lot more problems and really not trying to cover it up. However, I will say this right about now that the Deathbusters in the third season, I will have to say, they're just not really that engaging in my opinion. Even the Witches 5, I have to admit, are just not really that interesting in my opinion. Like, there's just not really much going on between each and every one of them, and I just don't think they really stand out. But I will say, they actually did a much better job in Season 3 of Crystal, which not only makes them much more menacing, but also incredibly interesting at the same time. It isn't your typical run-of-the-mill, they're actually done incredibly well in this. And I can definitely say the same thing for the Dead Moon Circus in the fourth season in the original, as I really love on how colorful they are, and I really love on the motivations on what they're trying to go through. And we'll probably have to wait and see when the Eternal movie comes out, just to see if they'll meet the same fate as the ones in the original. So yeah, even though the villains in the new version are impressive, I do find the villains in the original to be a whole lot more colorful, threatening, interesting, and a whole lot more memorable. Sure, some parts of them are silly and over the top, but that's part of the fun with the original manga. So, take your pick on this category, but we all know the real winner of this fight, and the villains in the original really stand out incredibly well. Point goes to Sailor Moon. But in order for Sailor Moon to fight in battle, she has to have some great backup. So with that being said, let's see which one of Sailor Moon's companions in both versions are better with Best Supporting Characters. Now, as we know, quite frankly, apart from the villains, both versions of Sailor Moon has a great track record when it comes to featuring supporting characters in each story arc. But the biggest one that we have to mention throughout this category is mainly the other Sailor Guardians, as well as their cat companions, Luna and Artemis. How so? Because they look out for Sailor Moon and help her understand that being a superhero is not all fun and games. Much like every single superhero villain that came out nowadays. But both versions did find a way to represent their characters differently. In the original, they are clearly back up to some goofy shenanigans alongside Usagi when they're Sailor Guardians, or just their regular old self. But they did add in some serious moments in order to make them understandable. And don't get me wrong, they did do a fine job in what they are doing and actually make them great supporting characters. The new version, on the other hand, does do that too, but they're kept a little bit more symbolic, and for while they did do their jobs just fine, they are hardly given any time to establish each character. Or so I heard. But the only character that is clearly symbolic and incredibly interesting in both the original and the new version is Luna. She's incredibly smart and intelligent, she has a pretty good heart towards the Guardians. And she does help Usagi or Sailor Moon become a much better person and learn to take her job as a Sailor Guardian seriously rather than goofing off all the time. She's a whole lot of fun to watch. So if anything, I guess I find Luna in the original to be incredibly likable because of what I said earlier, and not to mention have a bit more of a personality as well as the other Sailor Guardians, because they always look out for each other and always have their back, especially when they get into fights with one another. But on the other hand, they are pretty interesting when it comes to establishing their characters. Not that the supporting characters in the new version is bad or anything, for while they are also developed just as fine, I just felt that maybe they could have been a tad bit more adjusted to their character arcs a whole lot more. Like I said, that doesn't make them bad or anything, they could have been a little bit more likable. And even then, they are still doing their very best to do their job fine, But it leaves you thinking, why even bother trying to let them do what they want to do? And sometimes the supporting characters in the original does do that too, but it's kind of hard to get into the grasp with them. Take your pick on which one of these does a better job with their supporting characters, but we all know which is the real winner in this fight. Point goes to Sailor Moon. But of course, every story has to have a little bit of love. And one of our other characters really wanted to show the meaning of the word love. And before you ask, it is none other than Tuxedo Mask. You heard right. I am going to be judging Tuxedo Mask in this. Why I never even bothered to put him in the best supporting characters category in this one? Because I have to save him for his own category. But you get the idea. So with that being said, this is Best Tuxedo Mask. Okay, now this is also another incredibly tricky one for this because both versions did do a fine job in representing them. So this is pretty hard to choose, but I think it's best if we'll compare and contrast, starting with the Tuxedo Mask from the original. Now, as you would imagine, Tuxedo Mask in the original is actually pretty fun to have around with Sailor Moon, because if anything, he is supportive to her whenever he shows up to rescue her from certain danger. He's been giving a bit of an interesting backstory on how he became Tuxedo Mask and why, much like the Sailor Guardians, wanted to succeed on his mission, and to his credit, he does try his very best to make himself a pretty interesting character. But there's only one major problem with that. He's a tool. He's something for Sailor Moon to chase after. He's someone for her to save, someone for her to be concerned about. Oh, you get the idea. So short, sweet, and to the point, he's only there to make Sailor Moon look good. Not as another superhero to come and save the day, but to serve as eye candy to her. Now, don't get me wrong, the original manga does do a fine job developing his character and give him a truly defined identity, but the original anime kinda seems to be lacking at that. And as you would imagine, as the series started, all Usagi and Mamoru do whenever they first meet is hate each other to the core. And don't get me wrong, I know that's how society works, but good God, they really hammered that in a little bit too much.
But even so, go ahead and give it a shot.
Nobody asked you! Stop butting into our conversation!
Honestly though, people these days have it all wrong.
Also for the fact that he dated Sailor Mars beforehand. Why is that even needed in the first place? Even if it is, then I can't imagine those two being in the next season of Days of Our Lives. In the new version, however, they gave him a little bit more charm to him, and not to mention, face facts is 10 million times more interesting. Why, you may ask? Because apart from him always having Sailor Moon's back, and his backstory been given much more detail, but also constantly helping Sailor Moon in every way possible. And I mean like, actually help her out. He doesn't stand around and do nothing and let her do the fighting. He actually comes in to save her life. That is absolutely incredible. On top of that, both Usagi and Mamoru in the new version are also freaking adorable together. I mean, I don't have any problem believing both of these two are in love. Their chemistry is beyond precious. Like every time I see these two on screen, I do want to see them get together. It's at least a million times better than any of the forced romantic dialogue in the original.
What a nice surprise to run into you like this. It makes me feel so very lucky.
Looks like you and I are meant to be together no matter what, huh, Sako?
I don't get it. But however, the only time when their relation goes into a spiral and comes crashing down is in the second season, where he just constantly breaks up with Usagi for no apparent reason, just because. But even then, that's done a whole lot better in the new version. He gets killed off, he's turned evil, and even lets Chibiusa get in the way in their relationship. So of course it makes sense to jeopardize their relationship in the new version. In the old, even if they did get in the way with their relationship, it gives out very little time for their relationship to bloom because they keep on going back and forth if they want to be in it or not. And that's no fun. We do want to see them get together, and we do want to see them go through actual relationship stuff. And by the time they started to, all of this crap getting in the way, and boom, back to square one. I swear, if they had just killed off Mamoru and just let Usagi find someone else to be with in the next season, I wouldn't give a crap about the original. But because of how likable their relationship is in the newer version, it's a legitimately sad departure. Mainly because with all of the stuff I mentioned earlier with Tuxedo Mask either becoming evil or getting killed off, that's actually a much more tragic and heartbreaking angle. Why? Because he would have been much more interesting even if you took Sailor Moon out of the equation, where the Tuxedo Mask in the original would not be. Point goes to Crystal. The score is now tied and it comes down to the final category. Let's wrap up Sailor Moon vs. Sailor Moon Crystal with Best Sailor Moon. Now we knew clearly that when it comes down to the two different versions, going back to the original manga, it does do a fine job in capturing Sailor Moon's character, like we knew when we first started. Usagi does start off as a bit of a complete klutz and a crybaby at the same time, but after she turned into Sailor Moon, as the manga keeps on going, she becomes a whole lot smarter and a whole lot more braver and actually understands what it means to be a hero. So somewhere down in the middle, between both anime series, there's a perfect Sailor Moon just waiting to get out. Do you lean towards the Sailor Moon in the original who is trying to be more comedic, or the Sailor Moon in the new version who is actually taking her job more seriously? But to their credit, each one does do a fine job in capturing their exact persona. The Sailor Moon in the original does have her funny moments, and the Sailor Moon in the new version does have her socially awkward moments. Both have their disadvantages as well. Sailor Moon in the original, for example, is given way too many crying scenes and way too much of her acting like a complete klutz. Now, I don't have anything against her, but some of her moments are so folded in, she could cry at anything. Even when a penny is being dropped down to the ground, look! You see? But for while that is the case with the Sailor Moon in the original, I can't say the same thing with the Sailor Moon in the new version. Thankfully, all of her crying scenes are reduced down just to help establish her character, and yeah, some parts of her complaining and her constant whining are a little bit grating. But the big turning point for me is that despite of her being so hectic and stressful as she can be, Usagi in the new version is evolving and is becoming a whole lot more mature, where the Usagi in the original isn't. Every time the new version's Usagi wants to take one step forward, it seems like the original version's Usagi is taking 2 steps back. Between being Sailor Moon, not being Sailor Moon, being with her friends, not being with her friends, being emotionally in control, letting her emotions make all of her choices, as well as making some stupid choices which are just, well, stupid. I never felt she came all that far by the end of the series. But the Usagi in the new version, while making similar mistakes, seems to understand and learn more and more on what it means to be a hero, and tries constantly to put it into practice. From talking a guy out of a bad situation to trying to be there for her friends, she does it all without whining and without complaining. Not to mention, by the time she goes off to fight her next enemy, there's a sense that she will come across a problem and try her best to figure it out. Where the original Usagi is lost and has no idea which direction to turn. But the Usagi in the new version would pretty much take on any type of direction and actually translate it to moving forward. If she sees an opportunity for something or someone or making herself better, she'll take it. It's not always the best choice, but hey, at least she's committing to something. On top of that, the Usagi in the original is so quiet and awkward, it's hard to see her running around in a getup like this. The new version of Usagi is so energetic and full of energy that you can easily see her running around in a getup like this. She's always thinking of ideas within a mile and create them faster in order to get out of a situation. Of course she would do something this insane. It's like if Popeye is trying to be Wonder Woman and it flows incredibly well. Though I can't imagine that happening for a while. The only time she starts acting like a hero all the way is when she learns about the truth on who she was and what happened to her in the past. And fair enough, with a tragedy like this, anyone can feel that. With the Usagi in the original, it's right after her friends get axed off. And don't get me wrong, I can relate to that, but by comparison, you started to see my point? One starts acting like a hero because of what happened to her in the past, the other one did it because her friends died. Which one do you think is going the extra mile? Which one would you look more up to? Which one would you put more faith into saving the day? Which one would you look at and really admire and think to yourself, you're my hero in all of history and I always wanted to be like you? Well, take your pick on this one, but for me, as much as I love the Usagi in the original, the Usagi in the new version is more interesting, more entertaining, and more thought-provoking. Point goes to Crystal, which means that the all-around winner of this fight is Sailor Moon Crystal. Well, looks like Sailor Moon Crystal wins the fight, and looking back, it's actually much closer than I thought. For while Crystal does a much better job in capturing the original source material, I also still adore the original for standing out on its own. They both have their own advantage and disadvantage in terms of what they do. Some are for the best, some are for the worst. So with that being said, even though Crystal stands superior, the original is also another interpretation of Sailor Moon that you can also watch and adore. But I digress. Watch both of these shows and judge for yourself. Whew, man. What a really exhausting video to finish up. So yeah, I guess that's literally about it for Sailor Moon versus Sailor Moon Crystal. I wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching this video, and yeah, I think it has been quite a long while for me to get this video done for you guys, as well as talking about all the stuff that I need to talk about for this video. But hey, I gotta say it's great fun. And before you ask, yes, I am aware that Robin from Anime America has already done a video that is kind of a bit similar to what I just did right about now. But hey, I can't go wrong with more than just one person doing the exact same thing every single time. So, but yeah, I guess other than that, thank you guys so much for watching Sailor Moon versus Sailor Moon Crystal, and let me know in the comment section below on what you thought of this video, such as leaving me constructive criticism and or advice on how I can improve my videos in the near future, and also not to mention, do you prefer the original Sailor Moon anime, or do you prefer Crystal, or do you prefer both entirely? So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys thought about that. And of course, if you have any questions for me in particular, or if you just want to book me for a con or event that'll be coming up pretty soon, then all you gotta do is send me an email to this email address, beackley95@hotmail.com. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with me on updates, announcements, and new releases of my videos in the near future, and plenty of other stuff in particular, then you're more than happy to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and plenty other social media sites that I have provided. So yeah, all the links to them are down in the description box below. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this coming up in the near future, then all you gotta do is hit that subscribe button, as well as turn on the notification bell, so that way you'll be notified once I upload a brand new video. So yeah, that's literally about it. Thank you guys so much for watching this special video for all of you guys. I do indeed apologize if I took way too long to finally get this done for you guys, but hey, life got in the way and plenty of other stuff. So yeah, hopefully the next video I do won't be as long as this one that I did, because let me tell you, it was really exhausting to work on, but hey, I finally got it done for all of you guys, and I hope all of you are satisfied by it. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.